Hello, it's Jennifer McGuire, and I'm again a guest at Simon Says Stamp for their STAMPtember event. Today I'm using some great Hero Arts products along with some Simon Says Stamp products to create this popped die cut card. This is a great technique for creating dimension very easily with a die cut on a stamped background. There's a lot you can do with this, and so I'll go ahead and show you how I created this with lots of dimension. I'm using several Hero Arts shadow inks today. Two of them are new. The two on the right are new, Pumpkin Pie and Just Right. And then I'm using two of the older colors, which are Soft Olive and Soft Brown. I'm also using their new Cling Leaf stamp set. I love this stamp set. There's so many things you can do with it. It's great for techniques. And I'm just going to do some simple stamping on the background. I just want to cover this whole piece of white cardstock. It's 5.5 by 4 1/4, perfect for the front of a note card. I want to cover it completely with stamping. So the way I do a background, like when I want to stamp a background completely with images, is I start with the biggest first, and then I move on to the smaller images. So I've started with this big leaf, it's the biggest one in the set, and I've stamped with Just Rust first, and then also the Pumpkin Pie. Those are the two darkest colors. Now I'm moving on to the lighter colors, which are Soft Olive, and I'm going to stamp that here, and then Soft Brown. So by starting with the bigger images, I don't run out of space to include them on the background. Now for this card, I'm not going to worry about masking. I'm going to allow these images to overlap as we get going. I think it works for a background like this. You don't need to fuss with the masking. So now it's time to move on to the second largest stamp, which is this one here. I think this is probably my favorite in the whole set. And I decided to start with the Soft Brown, and I'm going to stamp this on the opposite side of where I stamped the Soft Brown before. So I'm trying to spread out the different images and also spread out the color. So now I'm just continuing to do this. I've moved on to the third biggest stamp here. I didn't stamp that many of the second biggest because I'm going to run out of room if I only do the big leaves. So I just want to kind of spread this out. Now you'll notice as I'm going that I make sure the most important thing is that your darkest color, that those are spread out, kind of in the visual triangle. So right now the darkest color is the Just Rust. I have one kind of in the middle left there, and then I have one in the bottom right corner. So I'll make sure to put another image in the Just Rust kind of up towards the top right, because we want to make sure that those colors are that color is spread out since it's so vibrant. So here I'm going to go ahead and do that in the top right. Make sure I get kind of a visual triangle there. With the softer colors, I don't think it's as important. You just want to make sure that they're spread out a bit. So before I fill in all the little areas, I want to make sure that everything is spread out enough. So I'm just kind of doing a check here to make sure of that. And then I can move on to the smaller images and start filling in. And with these smaller images, it really doesn't matter what colors I put where, because I've taken care of a good variety and getting it nice and spread out with the bigger images. So now I have my background covered here. It's time to do the die cutting. I love this new big die from Simon Says Stamp. It's a great one for many different style cards. I'm going to take this and I'm going to center it up as best as I can on the front of this stamped piece. And I'm going to just use some Post-it sticky tape to hold it in place and then run it through my die cut machine. You could use any die cut machine for this. I use the Vagabond myself. Now after I've run it through, I'm going to take this and glue this onto the front of a white note card. Now later you'll notice that I changed this up and actually trimmed a little bit off the edges so some of the white note card shows around the edge. But originally I thought that it'd be good to just cover up the whole front of the white note card, as you see I'm doing here. So this piece fits perfectly to glue down to cover the entire front of the card. Now instead of just gluing that die cut back in place without any dimension, I wanted to pop it up, and using pop dots just wasn't an option because it's so detailed and so thin. So I've cut a bunch of green, dark green cardstock scraps here, and I've just cut it big enough for that die, and I'm using some glue stick to glue two pieces of the cardstock together. So I'm going to do this with 6 pieces, so I'll have 3 stacks of 2, and that way I can die cut 2 at a time. And that way I can layer up my hello die without having to glue all 6 layers together, because some of the layers will already be glued together. I'm just using glue stick because it's quick and easy and I don't need to waste a lot of adhesive doing that. So now that I've got these ready, I'm going to go ahead and die cut them, just the 2 pieces stuck together at a time. And this die does a great job at cutting through the 2 layers. So I'm going to go ahead and take the die out of all the negative space on each of these 3 pieces. So I have 3 pieces I'm pulling apart here, but remember they're actually 2 stuck together in each, so it's 6 layers of cardstock. Now I want to glue all of these together on top of each other. This time I'm using some glossy accents. It's just less messy than glue stick on this thin little die cut. So I'm just putting a real thin trace of glossy accent along the top of this die cut here. and I'll take one of the other combos of die cuts and set it right on top. And it's real easy to line this up, just kind of move it in place. Glossy Accents dries pretty quick with paper, so you can just get it held in place and move on to the next step. So right now I have 4 layers thick of cardstock. Now the reason I took a dark green cardstock for this is I think it's fun to see that dark color from the side when the card is done, but you could also just do it from white cardstock if you want. I just think that pop of color from the side is kind of fun. So now that I have these layers stuck together, I'm going to go ahead and glue the next layer on top of this. Again, I'm just going to end up with 6 layers of cardstock behind our stamped die cut piece. So I'm sticking this on top, and then finally putting the last bit of Glossy Accents to put the stamped die cut on the top. I love the results of layering all these die cuts together because you end up with what looks like a store-bought embellishment because it's nice and sturdy and thick. So you can see that little bit of green peeking out the sides of the layered die cut. So now it's time to put this onto the card. The great thing about this is after you've covered the back with a thin layer of adhesive, this just pops right into the open hello space on the card, kind of like a puzzle piece. It fits in there perfect. It's very easy to line up. Now remember, we also have the center of these letters to put back in place. So I kept those from earlier on, and I'm just going to push them down with my fingers and put them right into the places here. Now, if you have trouble with some of these smaller pieces, getting them back into the place, one of the things you can do is after you pop them in there is you can press them down with a craft knife. I just use the tip of a craft knife just to kind of push them into place so that they fit nicely and are tucked in there well. So here you can see the fun that you get by having that green peek through the sides and have the die cut popped up off the card. Now again, I decided to trim this card down and let a little white show and put it onto another note card. I just felt like it needed that finishing trim around the edge. So there you have another fun technique that you can do with your die cuts and your stamps. If you have any questions, please head to simonsaysstamp.com, and thanks for watching.